In terms of the cost of living, what it costs to live here, quite frankly, inflation rate dropped 2.4% for the month of September. It was at 9% 2 years ago. However, you ask anybody in Maine right now what it costs to go to the grocery store, put gas in their car, heat their homes, versus what their retirement portfolio looks like, telling two very different stories. So, Congresswoman Pingree, what is the solution that you would bring to Washington to address what it takes to financially survive in Maine?
Sure. I mean, there are a whole lot of pressures that people have had. Some of it is related to inflation. Some of it are just a whole variety of other costs that we can be more helpful with. I mean, inflation didn't happen overnight. So much of it was related to some of the challenges we faced during the pandemic, and it's sort of hard to think back to that time. But the truth is, you know, we were on lockdown for a while. A lot of things just stopped. We didn't have as much business activity. All of us who lived in Maine saw there were virtually no tourists coming. We had supply chain shortages, we had shipping issues. There were just so many things that backed up the economy. Some people want to blame all of this on government spending. We did spend money during that era. We had the CARES Act. We had programs like PPP, and a lot of businesses wouldn't have survived in Maine if we hadn't had many of those programs. And we do have to always balance how much we're spending and how much we invest in our economy. But many of the things that people are struggling with today are things that we are actively working on. We haven't solved the problem. We're trying to bring down the cost of inflation, but things like housing that we just talked about, the cost of food, some of that has to do with price gouging, some of it has to do with the supply chain shortages. Childcare costs are through the roof, and for a lot of people going to work is really difficult because they can't afford the cost of childcare or their education or their debt. Fuel costs have leveled out a little bit and are better than they used to be, but I believe we have to invest much more in renewable energy so that we can have less expensive fuel. And we're also starting to pay for climate change. A lot of people don't want to admit it's real, but we lost 60% of our working waterfront this year. Many communities are still trying to clean up. Many businesses are still trying to rebuild. Insurance costs are through the roof if you live in a coastal community. And we are going to see increasing costs there, and part of our job is to make sure that that doesn't become one of our new inflationary pressures. One of
those measures. Mr. Alcorn, we'll move on to you with this question as well. What specific solution do you have for addressing that imbalance of what it costs to survive here versus what the market may suggest?
Again, I think government really is not something that we should look to solve all of our problems.
So no solution? Is that the answer?
As far as making life better here, no, unfortunately, we're so far in debt right now. We've got $35 trillion in debt, and we have to get back. We have to create jobs, and just let the free market do that. I don't think government can't do that. We have to step up as people, as Mainers, as Americans. We have to start being more responsible for ourselves, take care of ourselves. And just, I know it's times are hard. I mean, you know, everything's expensive, but you just, again, I'll just say it over and over. We can't rely on government for all of our solutions. If anything, I'll stop spending, because stop spending so much, that will help, or it's supposed to help with keeping inflation in check.
Okay, well, Mr. Russell, same question. What's your plan for addressing what it takes to live here?
Well, I think the huge cost, or the huge increase in inflation, was the catalyst for that was getting away from energy independence. And I think we need to get back to being energy independent, and energy dominant is the word, where we start selling more and more of our energy to other nations worldwide. Not only will that help with the price of everything, because everything is related to energy, but it will also help from a national security perspective. We have allies that are relying upon our enemies for their fuel needs. That needs to change. The increase in population has not matched the increase in housing shortage. We have 80,000 units that we're short right now. Since 2020, the population has only increased 30,000. So those numbers don't add up. Inflation is also caused by the amount of spending we're doing at the federal level. Chellie, you were on the Appropriations Committee. We've talked about getting to a balanced budget here. We are $1.9 trillion in debt right now. The interest on that debt for this next year will be over $1 trillion. Imagine what we could do if we didn't have to pay that interest and we had an extra $1 trillion to spend on the needs. So I agree with Ethan here. The U.S. government is not the answer to everything. We simply can't afford to do what we're doing anymore, spending way more than what is in our budget.
Where do we start cutting? Where's your number one place
well,
to start
there
cutting?
are things that we can't cut, so there are mandatory spending limits, but we do have some discretionary spending, and that's where we need to start, right there. Folks look at the military for spending. I think, given the current threat environment around the world, we need to spend more on our military. As I was growing up, we talked about a 600-ship Navy. We're less than 300 ships in our Navy here right now. And we know that China is increasing the size of its Navy by leaps and bounds. We need to spend more on our defense. We have to look at other avenues to where we can save money. We are spending a ton of money right now funding non-citizens at the expense of our citizens. There's one place to save. President Biden boasts about $78 billion worth of relief for student loans. There's $78 billion we shouldn't be spending. I can't imagine asking my 94-year-old aunt to pay more in taxes to pay for someone else's school loan. That is beyond my comprehension.
Congresswoman Pingree, following this conversation, where do we start cutting? We are aware of the deficit and also the debt. Is there a place we turn to first to start addressing that?
I think, just to be clear, we spend a little bit less for all other things. Let's see, the amount we spend for defense, about $800 billion, is a little bit more than we spend for all other things combined if you leave out Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So just keep that in perspective. You know, we have a very strong defense industry in this state. I've always been a big supporter of a 600-ship Navy, so I know exactly what he's talking about. We build the DDG-51s here and the DDG-1000, so we've got a great source of pride. It's very hard to make those defense cuts, and when you start talking about it in the troubled world that we're in, it's not as easy as people think. Everybody has their ideas about where to cut. I would remind everybody that when Donald Trump was the president, he added $1.9 trillion to the deficit because he gave tax cuts to the wealthiest and big corporations. So some of it has to do with a little bit of a balance about does everybody pay their fair share. Yep. So one other thing I want to mention, one of my opponents here mentioned that we're not energy independent, and we have been energy independent since 2019, and under the Biden administration, we have actually produced more oil in 2023, 12.9 billion barrels of oil, than we did in 2019, 12.3 million barrels of oil. So we are producing, we are net energy producers. We are the ones who are picking up the slack when people don't want to buy for Russia right now. And as you know, most of our European allies, for national security reasons, are buying from us right now. We have definitely kicked it in. Now, we have huge concerns about the impact of fossil fuels on climate change, and you can't walk away from that question. But the truth is, we are already drilling everywhere, and the only places really left to drill in the United States have to do with offshore oil drilling. And if you're going to talk about energy later, we got to talk about that, because that is not a polite topic or an interesting or easy thing to say in the state of Maine, because we have to worry about what would happen if we were drilling for oil offshore.
And Mr. Alcorn, this may be your wheelhouse, looking for government to do less. You're in Washington. Where do you start cutting?
Well, like she said, strategically cutting some of the military. And I disagree that, you know, because it's dangerous times. It's always going to be dangerous times. There's always going to be somebody saying, oh, we can't do that. We have the biggest military in the world. And a lot of our expense comes from weapons that we're sending to places like Israel and Ukraine. I mean, the amount of money we're spending to those two countries alone, it's bewildering. And what are we getting? I mean, we should have brought Putin and Zelensky over here, and they're both at least Putin is one of the members of the young global leaders. Where we go to space with Russia. I mean, I don't understand what happened to diplomacy. So getting back to the spending, strategically cutting, I know that's going to be, you know, ruffle some feathers in the military by saying that. What
does strategically mean? Where do you start with the military?
Well, first we should audit the military, for one thing. How do you know what? They can't, they're unauditable. I mean, they have tried before and they have just given up because they have a system that's almost too complex to comprehend or to audit. And so there's one place, but we don't need to pull the rug out from everybody or from any one group or send panic about cutting everything. I know we can take care of everybody in this state, in this country, by doing common sense cutting. And common sense is, by the way, is my big thing. What happened during COVID was so uncommonsensical, it was ridiculous. And by the way, that was the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. We went up. Trump wrote a check for $6 trillion. That the COVID just became the greatest, one of the biggest expenses that we've ever had.
Okay, so we'll leave
for
it
no reason.
there for where we'll cut.
What's that?
We can't go back and cut COVID at this point, so we'll leave it there for where we'll cut.
I know. What's
when
done
we
is
come
done.
back, though, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, some viewer questions that were submitted for our candidates. That's next.